So from looking at your IMDb pages, I see that you both have done a few docs before. What lessons did you take from those prior documentaries that you use toward this one? The good and the bad?
Interesting.
Because you've been through the trenches before. What did you know this time that we either have to do this or don't do this?
That's an interesting question. I think my first film was called Dr. Bronner's Magic Soapbox. And one thing that I learned was that it takes a really long time to make a documentary. So I definitely had a sense of like, okay, if we're gonna start on this, it's gonna take a while. Like I feel like I had like a very solid understanding of the fact that it was gonna take a long time. Then I didn't have that the first time, and I also think that I had a very I don't know if realistic is the right word, but it was not a lot of expectations about, you know, how the film was gonna like get swooped up by the powers that be and run off and become the next greatest thing and make us millions of dollars. Like I was like, that is not the reality of being like a working documentary filmmaker today. And so I think my experience with that film really helped us to set up, for example, start building your audience the moment you start shooting, which is what we did. And that was because with Dr. Bronner's, what I realized is that, oh, there's this huge market out there. Everybody uses Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps. There'll be this great audience, but the tools weren't the same at that time. I mean, I was working in the early 2000s, so like Facebook didn't exist, you know, but I knew that there was a huge market, but it was too late. Like you can't make the film and then connect with your audience. There's too much work that has to happen in order to have that, you know, presence already. And so we really start talking about the film, like basically after that first trip with Ina May, we got our Facebook page up and running and like started trying to get people to talk about it. And I think that was probably the number one lesson that I learned was like, you're gonna have to build your audience and don't waste any time doing it.
I remember when we were driving to a birth with Ina May, and Sarah was on her phone. We were like in the middle of Tennessee on the highway, and she had written that we were on the way to the birth, and there was a picture of Ina May like in the car. And there were people from all over the world like sending their blessings. And I think that was a moment when I realized the power of it, and that we were connecting with people in Brazil and Germany, and they were all sending their, you know, greetings and support. And I think it was a hard thing for me in the beginning. I was like, why are we connecting with people? We don't even know what's going to happen with this film. What if we, you know, it felt like this extra added pressure of like, what if we don't, God forbid, we don't finish the film? And like, then we have this, you know, it felt so new and so unfamiliar to me to reach out while you're really in the incubator of making something, which I've always found like I've done in isolation, whether you're collaborating on a film or not, but you don't share anything until you're rough cut. And so I fought against it. I was like, I don't want to do that. That doesn't feel right. And I was completely wrong. And it took some time to, I mean, not very much time, but I just remember that moment feeling like, oh, this is a really amazing thing. And this feels really good to have all these strangers rooting for us. And so just to add to what you said about the social media part, I mean, yeah, and I had no idea the power of it. And I think that it was just beginning, like 4 years ago or 3 years ago when we started doing it, is when people were starting to realize that they had to connect with their audiences immediately. So it feels really good to be sort of like
having done it,
doing the most modern thing you can do as a filmmaker. You know, we've kind of surprised ourselves, like building a player on our own website to play the film. And you know, we've really tried to look forward at what are the best tools for independent filmmakers right now, and not relying on the old way, where you sell it for a really nominal fee and it's out of your hands. Like, how will more and more people see it, and how do we connect with our audience, and how do we get them to support us, and how do we support them and share our work with them? So that's been like Sara said, a big deal. That was completely new. Yeah, and also that's just, after the last documentary, I was like, I'll never make another documentary again. And then of course, it's an impractical career, you know, and you figure out ways in between to make it all work. But you know, it's really like, you have to love what you're doing, and I just love these women and I love being around them, and I felt like if this is going to take me away from my family at certain times, it has to be something that's meaningful and principled and will make the world a better place. And I think we both felt that way, and it felt like this was good work to be doing, and this might help women, and this might help families, and this might help doctors see a different way, and midwives and doulas and anyone, you know. Like when we premiered the film at LA Film Festival and the programmer was like, this is a film about humanity, and I was like, that seems pretty intense, but I was like, okay, you know. Anyways, so if you're going to make the commitment to make a film, have it be something that you have to make the film. We had to make this film. There wasn't really like a question, you know. It was like when we set out, it was like, yeah, we're gonna do this because this is important. It kind of fell in our laps in some ways. So it just felt like one day we were making the film and it had to be made, and we were the people to make it.
Mm. So it sounds like that's how you tempered your expectations, in that you were so taken by the process and everyone that you met that even if nothing happened with it, you were still going to be semi-okay because you just met these wonderful people and the stories inspired you.
Well, I'm not sure, because I think that you can only make a film if you're sure something will happen with it. I mean, there's too much work, you know, that goes into it. But I think the difference is you're going to make something happen with it, right? It's not like I'm gonna sit around and wait for something to happen with my film. Something is gonna happen with it because I'm gonna do all the things that need to happen in order to make something happen with it. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of a subtle distinction, but I think the I guess it just seems like critical to sort of remind ourselves that like we ultimately are responsible for the destiny of our films within certain very realistic parameters, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think so. So not sort of this fatalistic idea, well, if it's meant to be, whatever, then it will. But then also knowing that don't count your eggs before they hatch, but also still that you are going to put in the effort and build that audience ahead of time and really connect.
Yeah.
Sounds like that was your guidepost.
And work hard every day and figure out how to finish the film and, you know, make it the best it can be. Yeah. It's very hard. Mm-hmm. But it's been super satisfying as it goes out into the world. And
I wonder if there's a part of like, because I definitely identify too with what Mary was saying about like how challenging it is to start like connecting with your audience when you don't even know what it is that you're doing yet, and that has its own impact on the work that you're making as well, for good, and like, you know, there's some discomfort in that as well, but I also wonder if like that you've made a promise in a way that like you can't go back on. Yeah. You can't, you know, there's no choice but to get it done and get it done as well as you can.
That's probably part of the fear. Mm-hmm. I think I probably had is like, I mean, I always finish things that I begin, but I feel like that is part of it, is that you're indebted now.
Now you've said it out loud. We're doing this thing, and so it has to be as real as real can get.